I was 28 years old when it happened. My girlfriend and I had been dating for over 5 years now. We were so happy. She had the most beautiful smile I'd ever seen. She was the girl I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. We had the perfect life. We lived in a small but modest apartment. She worked as a substitute teacher at the local elementary school. I was climbing my way up the corporate ladder at an up-and-coming software company. Everything seemed to be going our way. One day, I came into work, only to discover that the cubicle next to mine was no longer empty. A baby-faced, clean-cut young man was sitting there. He couldn't have been more than 19. He greets me with a warm smile and a friendly handshake, and tells me his name is Joseph, and that he's interning here at the company. He's so optimistic and wide-eyed that I can't help but smile. Throughout the morning, I help him get his desk set up, as well as walk him through the standard office procedures. By the time our lunch break rolls around, we're gabbing like we've been friends forever. As we enjoy a hot cup of coffee, I ask Joe about his home life. His smile falters for a moment, before it vanishes completely, like it was never there in the first place. He tells me that he had been kicked out of his parents' house as soon as he turned 18, and had been struggling to find a job ever since. He had been applying and working for months trying to get this internship, but after all the time it took to get here, he no longer could afford to stay in the shitty motel he was renting. My heart broke a little. This poor kid, barely out of high school, trying his hardest to get a job, and now that he's got one, he's being forced out onto the street. Without pausing to give consideration, I offer him the couch in my apartment. His face lights up like a fucking Christmas tree. Of course, my girlfriend wasn't too happy about me bringing home a complete stranger, but after explaining the situation to her and having Joe meet her, she eased up. For months, Joe lived with us. He helped out around the house. He was never too loud or too dirty, and at work he was the model employee. He was starting to feel like he was part of the family. One evening, when I was in the bathroom having my nightly constitutional, I noticed something in the garbage can that most certainly shouldn't have been there. It was an empty pregnancy test kit. I confronted my wife about it, and she offered me a small smile and told me that I was going to be a daddy. I was ecstatic. We had been talking about starting a family about a month ago, but she seemed unsure at the time if we would be ready or not. I guess she changed her mind. I was walking on cloud nine. I was so excited to be a father, to have a child of my very own to love and care for. However, there was still an elephant in the room. My parents were very strictly religious and would not approve of me having a child out of wedlock. But that was okay, because I didn't plan to. I had known that I wanted to marry her since the day I met her, and carrying our child proved that she was ready to commit. So I waited for the perfect opportunity. 2 weeks passed, and then all the stars aligned. Joe had to work overtime at the office, so I took her out to her favorite restaurant. We had a wonderful meal, and then afterwards, we went back to the apartment to watch one of our favorite movies. As soon as the credits started, I sprang into action. I took her soft, beautiful hand in mine and popped the question. I was so excited I thought I was going to burst. But instead of a big yes, or a squeal of excitement, or any other reaction I had been expecting, she broke down sobbing. I was shocked. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. What had I done wrong? She eventually calmed down enough to speak, and that was when she told me the horrible news. A week before I found the pregnancy kit, I had stayed late at the office to help set up for a presentation the next day. She told me she told me that Joe had burst into the bedroom while she was changing and forced himself upon her at knife point. She looked at me with the most heartbroken look I had ever seen and told me that the child she was carrying might not be mine, and that she just couldn't bring herself to make a commitment after being violated. Before I could even say anything, she burst into tears again and brushed past me, out the door. I sat there for a few moments in a silent stupor, and then all I could see was red. So much red. How could he? How could that slimeball bastard do this to her? To me? To us? After everything I'd done for him? I let him into my home, and this is how he repays me? I was in a rage. I tore through the apartment, destroying everything that belonged to Joe, or even reminded me of him. Suddenly, I heard the front door open. I rushed to the foyer and saw him standing there, a dumbfounded look on his face. My blood boiled even more than I thought it possibly could. My next move I did without thinking. Even if I had been thinking, I'm sure I would have done the exact same thing. I strode over to that slime ball and punched him as hard as I could, right in his bastard face. His head snapped back from the impact, and he stumbled backwards a few feet. My fist had made direct contact with his left eye, and had already swollen up to the size of a cotton ball. I screamed at him to get out of my sight, out of my life, and if I ever saw him again, I swear to God, I would kill him. He started to say something, but I didn't want to hear it. I reeled back and threw another punch, this one connecting right in his solar plexus. He flew ass over tea kettle out the front door and into the hallway. I strode forward, ready to strike again, but by then he had already scrambled to his feet and took off down the hall like a wounded gazelle. I stuck my head out the apartment door just in time to see the stairwell door close behind him. I haven't seen or heard from Joe since. A month passed when the phone rang. I looked at the caller ID. It was my brother. I answered. He told me he was worried about me. I hadn't told anyone about what happened with Joe. My girlfriend was staying at a hotel. She was too emotional to even look at me. I stopped going to work. I stopped talking to everyone. I hadn't even left my apartment. I didn't want the world to see me. He begged me to tell him what was wrong, why I had been so depressed. I couldn't take it anymore. I finally broke down and told him. I told him that if it hadn't been for Cotton Eye Joe, I'd be married a long time ago. Where did you come from? Where did you go? Where did you come from?